Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Got loads to talk about in this latest chat about all things Tottenham Hotspur. An eventful game last night, an eventful press conference today at Hotspur Way, and the arrival of a new CEO or incoming CEO at Tottenham Hotspur, and that is Vinay Venkatesham. That's what I'm told. That is how I'm told by people that covered Arsenal for a long time. That's how you pronounce it, because yes, he is a former CEO of Arsenal. He was there for 14 years across 6 different roles, the last 4 of them as their CEO. It's going to be interesting. It's another one thrown into the lion's den. It feels like the shelf life of people working in and around the board at Tottenham Hotspur seems to be roughly the same as managers. It's around that 18-month, 2-year kind of period, isn't it? People don't seem to stick around for some reason. Who knows why? It's not that it's a crazy, chaotic club, but that anything can happen. Of course not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Vinay, as apparently he's called, that is his first name, but apparently that's how he's referred to. Just I guess for ease, for Venkatesham it's not the hardest name in the world to pronounce. Honestly, the amount of people that have a problem with Alistair, not just people having a problem with me, but also pronouncing it, spelling it. I'll get people replying to me when I write a tweet or something, even though my name is above it. We'll spell it in a completely different way. But hey, this isn't about me. It's about Vinay Venkatesham. And yes, I'm saying it enough times that I get that pronunciation in my head. It's the best way of dealing with it. So at Arsenal for 14 years, final 4 years as a CEO, decided to take a break last summer to kind of explore other opportunities. It was not, from what I understand from lots of the Arsenal reporters I've spoken to today about him, it wasn't one of those where he was kind of pushed out, they wanted to move on or anything. It was generally quite sad to see him go. I think he just wanted to explore new opportunities after so long at one club. 44 years old. I think primarily, and I know people are going to go, oh, but primarily I think he's maybe more of a business background. Certainly at Arsenal, there was a spell when he was managing director in charge of, I think it was business, commercial and operations, whereas they had, and I cannot remember the pronunciation of this, is it Raul Sanelli? Sanelli, perhaps? He was the head of football. They kind of had this dual role, and then eventually Sanelli left and Venkatesham took over the whole shebang. It's apparently, talking to other people far away from the club, it's quite a coup for Spurs to get him, because there were a few clubs trying to get him and certainly have done over the last year or so. So, quotes. There are some quotes that went out with the story that broke within the press conference. It was put out on the club's website. I think the Evening Standard certainly were very early with their story as well. I think they were kind of right on that story. But the club popped it out during the middle of the press conference, as you do. The quote from Daniel Levy is, "The club has experienced significant growth in recent years, making it crucial to expand our executive management. I have known Vinay for many years, having worked together in the Premier League and the ECA. I'm personally delighted that he's agreed to join our board as we build for success." Do a bit more building, please. That would be nice. And I mean, on the pitch. Vinay Venkatesham added, "I'm excited to be joining Tottenham Hotspur this summer after taking some time to recharge and evaluate my options. I believe this is an exceptional opportunity to work with Daniel, the board, and all the staff to take the club forward." Is there an Arsenal thing when it's someone at that level? I don't know. I know there's an Arsenal history when there's a manager, and sometimes with a lot with players as well. I don't know if people particularly care, do they? If they were a former CEO of the North London rivals, I would be surprised. They may well be. I generally haven't looked to see how social media has taken this. I presume at Tottenham there's more of a, what does that mean for Daniel Levy kind of thing about it, more so. And look, there's no getting away from it. Arsenal have been a big club, perceived as a big club. They've been on the big stage, and he's been kind of at the very top of a lot of that. So can he bring something positive to Tottenham? Certainly seems to be the case. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him in a moment, because as I've said, I've been speaking to lots of people that have been dealing with him. I mean, like I said, what does it mean for Spurs? That's the first thing we've got to look at. You would imagine the person it affects most is probably Scott Munn. Scott Munn was brought in as the chief football officer a couple of years back, in Spurs' words, to take charge of all football departments. So the questions now, I guess, will be: does his role kind of overlap with Vinay's? Does it, or is Vinay seen as an upgrade on Scott Munn, or someone to work alongside him? Again, that's me asking questions, not saying what exactly it is. Certainly, from the outside looking in, it seems like a lot of the same roles. For what the impression I get is Vinay. Venkatesham, I can't say his other name as well. I'm not really that bad that I just have to keep saying it. But apparently that is just how he's known. That becomes the name that people will use about him around Spurs. Yeah, I mean, apparently I think he surrounds himself with football people. So maybe it's still... I mean, Scott Munn's role is mainly kind of doing administration and sorting out various departments within the club as well. So maybe the day-to-day running of that might fall still within his remit, whereas Vinay's is more of a bigger picture thing. I don't know. What will be probably most interesting for me, because it's the only thing that really affects me massively, is he allowed to speak to the world? That would be very nice. Sorry, if you hear the odd crunching, it's because I've got one of these... lockets type halls things. I'm not advertising any companies. Throat soother things. I've still got the tail end of the man flu stuff, and rather than snot and sniffle and cough and all that, I'm trying to negate that by having this in the back of my mouth. So I don't know if you'll ever hear the cracking or see a weird little red sweet going across my mouth at some point, but it's to save you having to hear horrible noises. But yeah, we know Spurs is a bit of a closed book. That's as an understatement. It is really a closed book. When it comes to the powers that be, communicating, explaining, why have we done this, talking to the people, rather than the twice stately address to the nation, as it were, from Daniel Levy and the financial results and the chairman's message at the end of the season, we don't really hear anything. And as you've heard me bemoan before, we thought that people like Munn, like Fabio Paratici, were going to come in, and with previous experience of talking to people, I remember when both of them came in, looking at the stuff and saying, yeah, they've done interviews, they've done that, yeah, we're going to hear from them, we're going to hear explanations from the powers that be. No. Spurs said, oh yeah, if you see that door, if you could just slam that shut so no one can hear what we're saying, that'd be great. Thank you. Honestly, it's just contributed nothing as a public face. A bridge between the board and the fans, or the media. If the media are the part of the bridge, whatever. Not a word. It gives this. I've said this before. There's no humanisation. You've had the kind of the three powers that be that are there at the top of the club that you always kind of hear that are there. You've got Daniel Levy, the chairman, Matthew Collicott, finance director. Probably absolutely stuffed the title there. And Donna Maria Cullen, who's I think it's executive director. Those three have been there for a long time. We never really hear from them, apart from the odd quote that goes with a press release. And we kind of thought these other people were going to come in there and we were going to hear from them. You see various names, new board members come in and they go. New kind of people at the top of the food chain come and they go. And maybe this is finally the solution to that. Maybe, as I say, spoken to a lot of Arsenal reporters that cover that patch. working in the London football scene. I get to talk to a lot of them, and lots of very, very good journalists out there. And they kind of told me a lot about Vinay, I guess, and what he's like. He is really good at public speaking. Apparently, he is. Comes across as a very good guy, very charming. Slick was the word I heard a lot. He's very kind of smooth operator. And from what they were saying, he did a lot at Arsenal of what we criticise Levy and the board for not doing at Spurs. And that is just communicating, being a public face, and like I said, explaining why when decisions are made. If so much humanisation needs to be done at Tottenham. It stops people becoming caricatures. It stops this kind of feeling that people operate within the shadows rather than just being out there and explaining what they're doing and why they're doing it, and whether it is, as presumably it must be. The idea must be that it's always for the good of the club, but we never really know because we never get to hear about it. So yeah, from everything that about Vinay that's exactly what he did at Arsenal. And all the reporters that I've spoken to said he keeps a really good public relationship with the journalists. You get to see him out and about. He'll talk to people. He will do interviews with people. And yeah, just genuinely is there as a bridge and a public face for what's going on to explain things. And apparently he's very kind of passionate about fan issues and helping them, resolving them. It almost sounds too good to be true. It sounds like exactly what we've been calling out for at Spurs for a long time because, like I said, we thought kind of Scott Munn was going to be able to do that and we just never really heard from him. And Fabio Paratici, this smooth operator that spoke to Italian TV all the time, never really heard from him. And yeah, I mean, what does it all mean for Daniel Levy? Does it mean anything at all? History suggests probably not, because we've been here before. We assumed, especially with Scott Munn, that was Scott Munn's role felt like the most like, oh, he's going to take a big chunk of what Daniel Levy does away. We don't really know. We haven't seen much of a change. This is, again, we don't know. We're just on the outside trying to peer through any windows that Tottenham allow. And it's not good for a club that, Daniel Levy is constantly saying, we're just the custodians of this club. Well, someone that's just a custodian certainly likes to kind of put walls around everything and not let people know what's going on inside. And I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing at all. I think there's certain aspects, of course, that the public and myself, the media, whatever, can't be privy to. But it would be so much better as a club if it was more transparent and communicative about stuff. It's just common sense. It is. And maybe, give credit, maybe this is a step towards that. Perhaps it is. And I guess when it comes to kind of Daniel Levy and all that, it would be kind of almost nonsensical to bring in someone with Vinay's experience at the top level of running a football club for so long as well. And don't forget, I haven't even told you this, but yeah, he's been heavily involved in stakeholder management with the European Club Association. We did mention them earlier, the ECA, but also the Premier League. He's very well respected in the corridors of power within football. So this is someone that comes in with a lot of kind of oomph behind him and someone that is, is very likeable, people get on with, is a perfect public face figure for the club. And, we'll see what it means. I'm hoping that at the least in the summer, we might get some kind of all sit-down roundtable interview with the other journalists with him. That would be great. And just kind of finding out a little bit more. We'll see, obviously, when in the summer he joins, whether it is in time for, let's say, the pre-season tour or something like that. Yeah, we'll find out. But certainly an interesting appointment, and hopefully something positive. This is someone that is used to, I guess, getting things done, making things happen at a big club, whether we want to admit it or not. And it's been at a club that's won things as well, albeit not, the biggest prizes in recent years, but they've certainly won stuff, and that's something that's not been the experience at Tottenham. So just bringing anyone in that's got more of an idea of winning things is not a bad thing. So yeah, we'll see what it all means. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting arrival. Vinay Venkatesham will be joining us in the summer. So more on him to come, no doubt, in the weeks ahead, and what it all means, and what it means for everyone at the club. He will be a very powerful figure in that club, and he will come in with his own ideas. Does that mean potentially, and this is absolutely just me spitballing, it's not saying this is going to be the case, but does he come in with ideas of people he's worked with before or really admires when it comes to director of football? What does it mean for a technical director like Johan Lang? Postecoglou, obviously already plenty of speculation around his future, but does Venkatesham come in with his own ideas of who he'd like to be in charge? Or, as I've been told, is he mainly a guy that deals with more the business stuff and he will bring in a football type, or he will trust what Johan Langer wants? And we'll see. And like I said, what does it all mean for Scott Munn? Yes, interesting one. Talking of interesting, and talking of journalists, and talking about the public face of things, Postecoglou's press conference. We, I'll completely admit, expected it to be a bit of a press conference today. We thought it's his third press conference in as many days. It's going to be quite a meh press conference ahead of a meh game that probably isn't the biggest game in the world, bearing in mind with the second leg of the Europa League quarter-final coming up. But actually, it turned out into a bit of a rather than meh. We found out that there's a mole within the club. That always makes me think of Austin Powers when he's pointing at, wasn't it Fred Savage, the guy that used to be in the Wonder Years as a kid and then became a director? He just points at Fred Savage, who has a mole on his face. He's going, molly, like that. But yes, there is a mole within Tottenham Hotspur, according to Ange Postecoglou. So it came about because you might have seen ahead of the game yesterday was speculation about Wilson Odobert. And ironically, yes, I'd kind of heard that. I actually heard that in the morning of the game. But you know my two-source rule and stuff like that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But essentially, Postecoglou was asked today about Wilson Odobert and the speculation around him ahead of it. So first he spoke about Odobert. He said, yeah, he's okay. Again, with all these guys who have come back from long-term injuries, we've taken a different approach. And we kind of know we need to be always monitoring how they're going. We did it with Mickey, Destiny, Romero, and all these guys who came back from long-term injuries. There are different times when they're going to get sore in different areas. But Wilson trained today and we'll see how he is tomorrow. He should be available for the weekend, but certainly nothing wrong with him. Then we went into mole territory. And he said, look, there is no doubt we've got a leak inside the club. Somebody who continues to leak out information. They have all year. When he says year, he often means season. I don't know why. It doesn't help us. It just makes our job more difficult. We try really hard to keep things in-house, like all clubs, because we don't want on game day opposition being aware, our game day opposition, being aware of any sort of team selection. But we've got somebody within our camp who continually gives out information. We've narrowed it down. We've been looking at it for quite a while and kind of have a fair idea of where it's coming from. We'll deal with it, but it's not helpful for us, and half of it is misinformation. Half of it is half of the information. But irrespectively, it certainly doesn't help our cause, because on game day, what we want to try and do is keep as much information in-house. We try really hard to find out information about the opposition, and it's very hard to. But with us, someone has an open line to what we do. It's disappointing because you'd like to think everyone who's in our camp is working with us, not against us. And this was fascinating. It really was, because, look, as journalists, we get info from everywhere. We do. Sometimes inside the club, but mostly often outside the club, be it from people around players, that could be agents, family, friends, whoever, people that know people in the club. There's so many. It's like a spider web of potential areas for information. But of course, with someone like me, you know very well my rules on double sourcing. I won't put something out unless I've at least had two very different people corroborate what I've heard. And so it was really interesting to hear him talk about this, because I've certainly had information ahead of matches about injuries. I rarely put out match day information about injuries. It would have to be something huge. I think I once put out something about Harry Kane, purely because it was double sourced and it was big news. And as a journalist, that's primarily what I have to kind of look to. But there is, of course, another part of me. The exception, that would be the exception to the rule. On the whole, often I can't get stuff double sourced when it comes to an injury. And that's, there's no point putting out something that is kind of a bit half-baked when it comes to an injury thing, because especially match day stuff, so many players can seem injured the day before, and it might just be a knock they get over, and you look daft if you put something out in. But of course, there is also a slight element as well of, look, I'm a Spurs fan as well. Do I really on a match day want to help out the opposition with some kind of something that might be key information? Probably not. I mean, Harry Kane was an exception on that one occasion because it was a huge thing and it was a big story at the time as well. But on the whole, a combination of those two, it's not likely something you'll see me do. What you might see me do, and it's worth looking at occasionally, is you might see my predicted lineup is a bit like, oh, and you'll have people going, no way is that person going to play and that person's not. That might be because I've from various places have just heard a suggestion that this player might not be fully fit, or this player might, or whatever. That's maybe way I do it, but it's in the form of a predicted team rather than anything, certain and serious and concrete out there. But like I said, there are certain times, of course, as a journalist, if you get it double sourced and it's important information, it has to go out there. But yeah, this is going to be a topic at Spurs from now on. Of course, that door has been opened. I can kind of see the logic in him bringing it up now, because I guess he wants to frighten whoever the person he suspects it of being into not doing it ahead of the biggest game of the season. That's Thursday night. So yeah, I get it. And look, there's more on this in the 10:30 stuff tonight. It came right at the end of the broadcast press conference, and of course that led to follow up by the national journalists in the embargo section, which goes at 10:30 for newspapers for the following day. So look at that. It goes into a little bit more specifics, and it's interesting. It is interesting from the outside, and it's interesting because all the journalists are kind of looking at each other, thinking like, oh, is it you? Is it me? Everyone's like double bluffing, who's talking to who kind of thing. It was a good bit of game of intrigue in the press room, and who knows what and who talks to who, but without ever revealing who knows who and all of that. So yeah, little kind of in media thing that's of very little interest probably to the outside world. What did I ask him? I asked him a bit of a fluffer question first, which you sometimes do as a journalist. We get 3 questions, and sometimes I'll ask a little bit more of just a kind of not a nice question, but I guess an easy kind of assist, as it were. No, he doesn't like assists, but just an easy question to get him talking, get him into a good run of talking about something, and then maybe I can ask about other stuff that he might then go a little bit deeper, and he might not see it as an attack on him and all this, or an attack on a player and things like that, because sometimes managers are like that. We often find that if a journalist, and this goes with all managers, Postecoglou as well, if a journalist asks a manager a question that winds him up slightly, the next journalist kind of cops it as well. They get a little bit of that annoyance from the previous question in the answer to their one, and sometimes it means you don't get quite as good an answer. So yeah, sometimes you'll probably think, oh, gold, why have you asked that question? And sometimes it's just a fluffer, a setting up kind of thing to get him back into talking the way I want him to talk. It's almost like there's something to this interview malarkey. Doesn't always work. Trust me, it doesn't always work at all. If you've ever dealt with Nuno, it doesn't always work. But I asked him, the second question I asked him, the first question was just about feeling like the last couple of games, it feels like some of Spurs' attacking fluidity's come back, and kind of where that's come from and what in training they've been working on stuff. Second question was about Christian Romero, because I found it fascinating watching him last night. We'll talk about a little bit about this when we talk about the match. I found it fascinating last night how Romero likes to take charge of games, and in one way he does that is just, I'm going to charge forward and I'm going to stay there as a striker. It's really weird. Serge Aurier used to do it all the time, and it's fascinating to watch. So I just kind of wanted to ask him, what's that like as a manager, seeing one of your players who you've clearly not told to go up as a striker? That's why I kind of didn't want to go into it with him in any kind of a bit miffed at the last answer, because I wanted him not to take it as me going, Romero's crazy, isn't he? And you've lost control, which wasn't what I was trying to say. And so his answer, it was quite decent. He said, well, within the scope of what we're trying to do, one aspect of it is just Kuti trying to be an instigator and an aggressor in the game with and without the ball. At different times it works. You might not remember, but he scored a goal against Arsenal by doing exactly that. We understand he did. It was a really good goal. We understand there are moments you need to do that, and other times we need to make sure we stay disciplined. But for the most part, Kuti, when he's out there, feels like he always wants to be somebody that makes an impact on the game, and I think that's important for us. So that was quite an interesting answer. He was kind of he was saying in there, there's times probably don't want him doing it, but there's other times when it does kick on the team. And there were a few occasions, he won a corner at one point, Romero, and it just ups the intensity a little bit. And then the other question I asked him was about Matisse Tell. There have been some more opinion kind of pieces in the German media today that Tell was going to head back at the end of this season to Bayern because Spurs maybe weren't utterly convinced by him or something. So I kind of asked him along those lines and just said, look, you said whatever it was, a month ago, he was definitely going to be a Spurs player. Is that still the case? And he said, yeah, I mean, don't believe everything that comes out of German press. Any press, really, these days. I shouldn't say press, but just information in general. I think he was starting to allude, this was an answer before the mole stuff. I think he was starting to allude to that. He said, the days of it being double-checked, triple-checked, triple-sourced are long gone. Excuse me, no, not entirely. No, Matisse is important for us. When he came in, people forget he hadn't played hardly at all at Bayern, and we threw him in. He was playing game after game after game, and it was always going to be a big ask for him, but that's the challenge he had. Now we're working with him at training. We really believe he can make an impact, and physically he's much better now. He's in a much better place, and he's getting to understand our game a lot better, so we'll keep working with him. I still think he's an exciting talent, and I'm happy to have him. I mean, you could argue that wasn't as strong as we're definitely going to keep him. That perhaps maybe is because of Postecoglou's own position. Maybe less assured of his own position right now and able to say that. Personally, I still think they'll try to keep him. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back in for a renegotiation of a loan. That is something we have seen Spurs do so many times with certain loan deals and options that were on them. So that could happen. Personally, he's 19 years old and he's got bundles of talent. I think he, exactly like Postecoglou said, I think he was thrown into a very fast and physical Premier League and had to kind of adapt in a central attacking role, which wasn't the best place for him early in his Spurs career because a lot was being asked of him physically. I think he has looked a bit brighter. I thought his little cameo last night was good, was positive. He had that lovely moment. I think it was him that set Jed Spence away, who pulled it back for Johnson, who skied it in a very similar move to the one at the weekend when he scored his first goal, which was Sonny to Spence that day. So yeah, I would be surprised if they don't still try to have him as a Spurs player, but whether they try and get that price down a little bit by saying what he's been like since. And it doesn't sound like he has a future at Bayern either, so that might be easier to do. But it seems like he's settled in well anyway. Excuse me, I'm going to have to cough. Right. He was also asked about Kulusevski, to which he said, yeah, he trained today with the team, well, with the guys who didn't play last night, and he's looking good. He won't be available for Sunday, obviously, but the plan is for him to train through the weekend, train with the first team from the beginning of the week, and if he gets through that, he'll definitely be available Thursday. Again, unlikely to start because he's been out for a while, but he looks really good. I mean, that would be a massive boost for the team. If they can get Kulusevski back in there, that would be absolutely huge. Just because it's another avenue of creativity. And he has that kind of do or die spirit about the way he plays. And he says unlikely to start, but you never know. With the fitness and the shape Kulusevski keeps himself in, you could never count against him getting an hour or so. Maybe even comes on at half-time, perhaps, depending on how the game's going. But either way, just having him back, going to be huge. It's a big... It's kind of essentially full team then, isn't it? And then Danso, he didn't speak about Danso. So presumably he hasn't quite returned to training yet. But yeah, he was also asked about Sonny's form and whether he's still a big influence for Spurs. He said he's still a huge influence for us on and off the pitch. He's working hard for the team. I thought last night he played his part in us creating a lot of opportunities. And I thought him and the others in the front three were really disciplined in the way we executed those. So yeah, Sonny's hugely important to the club, hugely important to what we're doing at the moment, which seems as good a time as any to start to turn towards last night's match. There was a nice little kind of final line. It was George Sessions from the Press Association got it out of him right at the end, where he spoke about football gods, Postecoglou, and how they've abandoned him and Tottenham Hotspur. And if they are to win in Germany next week, they're going to have to do it their own way and the hard way. I think that's probably fair to a degree. I think fortune has certainly not favoured Tottenham this season. But I would also say neither has their own inability to kill off the opposition. I mean, look, we've said it enough times. Spurs are the second highest scorers in the Premier League. They're also the joint sixth highest in the Europa League. They're actually the Europa League's highest ever goal scorers. Did you know that? 336 goals in the Europa League. But it doesn't kind of tell the stats of this season. It doesn't really tell the story of the chances they've missed or, of course, the opportunities they presented the opponents at the other end of the pitch as well. Last night Spurs could have won the tie, albeit they could have put themselves in such a commanding position that they really could have gone to Germany in a much kind of easier position. They responded pretty well, to be honest, to, yes, another early goal. Hugo Ekiteke, I think that's how you pronounce it. Clinical low strike into the bottom right corner of the net, just 6 minutes in. It was a great strike. It's one of those where everyone just goes, ugh. But when you watch it back, yes, it comes from Maddison loses the ball and it's a bit easy break. But the actual finish is terrific. It's a really, really good finish from outside the box, inside the corner, inside the post. It's a really good finish. But I didn't feel like Spurs let that throw them. I was quite impressed with that. I thought they dealt with it quite well. They kept pushing up the pitch. And then they scored a brilliant equaliser. 26 minutes in. It's a classic Postecoglou goal. It was the style of a Postecoglou goal, I don't know, that looks like some awful dance move, but you've heard me say it enough times. Get down the side, knock it in, someone in the middle sweeps into the net. It was a lovely ball from Sonny over the top. Solanke had made a really good run diagonal across the box. He picks it up, stops it from going out, knocks it back to Maddison. Maddison jinks inside, beats his man, puts it across, and there's Pedro Porro, very far from his right back slot, with the most beautiful back flick between the defender's legs into the goal. Lovely, lovely, lovely goal. Postecoglou was asked about the goal afterwards. He said, that's something we obviously work on, getting into those areas in the box in terms of the half spaces. Madders, we know, is really creative, and obviously Dom was the one who received it, so there was a gap there at the near post. We've always said that we need the next person in line to attack that area, and Pedro happened to be that, and it was an outstanding finish. If you look at it, Brendan is where he's meant to be, at the far post if the ball goes through, and Lucas on the edge of the box. It was a well-worked goal, and I think one we deserved definitely, but we had some fantastic moves in the second half. It was just that we weren't able to capitalise on them. And that's it. That was a beautifully worked goal, but also there were loads of really lovely moves in the second half. I've seen people saying that Spurs didn't create a lot and things like that. They absolutely did. They played some really nice football at times, especially during that real key, crucial spell in the second half when they should have put the game beyond doubt. It kind of started with a Lucas Berval moment, which was beautiful. It would have been one of the best goals we'd have seen at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, without doubt. It really would have. It kind of takes the ball, does this pirouette between two Frankfurt players, drives forward, and we're all thinking, have a shot, lad. And he does, he looks up and just hits this drive, and we were perfect. The press box was such a great view behind it, and we're like that kind of thing. And it just needed to be probably that much lower than it was. Cannons off the crossbar. If it had just been that lower, it would have probably gone in off the top of the left-hand post, I think. It was a beauty. But rather than that be like a, oh no moment, it actually kind of got everyone going. The crowd were whipped up. The players were inspired from that. And Spurs just kept pushing forward. Sonny cut inside from the left, curled a shot at the keeper. Cal Santos did a really nice save, to be fair, from it. Pushed it wide. From that resulting corner, from that save shot, Rodrigo Bentancur powers I think it was a Porro corner onto almost the exact same bit of the crossbar that Bergvall hit. Then after that, you got Maddison cuts inside. Sonny's in his name, technically, Maddison. Cuts inside the defender and has a low shot. It's one of those where, could he have played it across? Maybe, but I think the element of the surprise was in the shot as well. Keeper saves that. Then they had that moment I spoke about, Brennan Johnson putting the ball over the bar from almost exactly the same kind of area and move that he scored from his first goal on Sunday against Southampton. Doesn't do it. Final moment of the game, wasn't it, pretty much? Porro hits a free kick across. Bentancur nods it across the 6-yard box. And there's Mickey van der Ven running in. It kind of makes a mess of it. The more I've watched it, if he gets any kind of decent contact, it's probably a goal. But he kind of does this weird thing where he heads it down onto his foot, I think, and then the ball kind of spins up, and it's maybe going to creep under the crossbar, and the keeper tips it over. And there were plenty of moves that kind of almost resulted in chances. I thought they attacking-wise, that was why I asked the first question to Postecoglou today. which I kind of do feel like first half against Southampton especially, and a fair chunk of last night's game, it feels like the returning players are starting to gel again in the attacking moves, and I think Solanke up top helps that as well. We'll talk about the attack in a minute. There's definitely elements of improvement there that really need to be. So George Sessions asked Postecoglou about that final Van der Ven chance, and he said about, does it just feel like the football gods are not kind of looking on you right now? And he said, I'm resigned to the fact that the football gods have got their eyes elsewhere this year. They're obviously busy with other clubs and other managers, so whatever we get, we're going to have to do without them this year. I think he said something more. He was asked about football gods again, and he said they're not receiving his calls. He keeps trying to ring them. And at the other end of the pitch as well, Frankfurt, for kind of all the fear about what they were going to bring to the party, didn't really, other than that terrific early goal, didn't really bother Vicario at all. There was the odd opening Spurs gave them with a little bit of kind of space that Spurs in this iteration of Spurs do give a team. But Vicario, very little to do. They only had 4 efforts on goal, Frankfurt, 2 of them on target. Spurs had 10 shots, 6 of them on target. Yeah, I mean, Dino Topmuller, the Frankfurt boss, said after, I think it's exactly how we imagined it was going to be this quarter-final against Tottenham. We became a bit too passive. Maybe the early goal was responsible when we sat back on our laurels, but defensively we had a lot of things under control. Tottenham remained dangerous, but we had their wingers under control. I think 1-1, it's a well-earned draw for us, and we know Tottenham took the lead in the second half and showed us exactly how strong they are in their attacking plan. We did very well to resist. I think in brief, we could say we're very happy with the game, how it went, with the experience we had and the end result. We've laid a good basis for at home next week in front of a full house against Tottenham. We're looking forward to it hugely. Yeah, I would imagine they'll be better at home, certainly. But I think, like I said, Postecoglou will take heart from the last couple of games and the feeling that maybe they're starting to find a bit of a rhythm again in terms of going forward. They've just got to put the ball in the net. It's as simple as that. And he said, if we can repeat that next week, and there's no reason we can't, we'll give ourselves a good chance. This is Postecoglou. I really felt like we overwhelmed them with our football, with our running, with our press. It wasn't just the chances we created, but the chances we almost created. It's going to be that sort of season. Nothing is going to come to us easy. We're going to have to go there and fight now to get what I thought we deserved tonight, and that's what we'll try to do. So in terms of the selection, the team probably had 2 main decisions to make, didn't they? One was who were going to be the fullbacks, and the other was going to be probably who's going to be on the right wing. Obviously with the Odegaard speculation, part of that as well. He went as the fullbacks with Porro and Udogie, with Jed Spence on the bench, which obviously caused a lot of consternation because Jed Spence has been one of the rare shining lights this season, has been one of the most informed players in recent months. So it was a big call. And I was speaking to some people, some Spurs fans, as we were waiting for the train at Northumberland Park last night, and they were kind of saying, "Oh, it was the wrong team. It should have been Jed Spence should have played." I think his decisions, and I told them that, I think their decisions at fullback were justified. Porro scored a lovely goal, and I thought Udogie had one of his best games this season. I thought he was really good. It was just his driving force. He won all 4 of his ground duels, made 7 ball recoveries, completed 2 dribbles. He was just constantly trying to make things happen at both ends of the pitch, and I actually thought he played really well. Of course, there's the unknown. Would Jed Spence have provided more? I don't know. But certainly, I do feel like maybe Udogie and Sonny just have that longer partnership between each other. They kind of know about each other's play a little bit better. And yeah, he ran himself into the ground, Udogie, at the end. He kind of had an issue, and we could see in front of us, Postecoglou and Matthew Wells, his assistant, were frantically kind of waving at him and going like, "Is that it? Are you done? Are you done?" kind of thing. And I kind of had to ask after, because he did come off for Spence about 30 seconds later or so. He just sat down on the floor. And he said, yeah, he just got cramp, Postecoglou said. It was unbelievable. I thought he was incredible, the amount of running he did, his effectiveness, it was incredible. He was just cramping up. He'll be fine. So yeah, I kind of agreed with the fullback selection. Like I said, they created loads of chances, Spurs. I would really struggle to see how anyone could put Spurs drawing last night down to Postecoglou, because they created enough chances to win that game 3-4-1 at least. If they'd done that, the team is absolutely spot on. It's that classic thing, he can't put the ball in the net. That's up to them to do it. It's probably his most thing he was frustrated about on the sideline was the officials. There were some strange decisions going on. The refereeing, I think the referees were from Poland, I think. VAR was different. I can't remember the name, maybe Spanish, but the referees on the pitch were kind of a unit from Poland. And there were some weird ones. There were various times where they gave like a goal kick or a throw or something, or a foul even against Spurs. And you look back on the replay and it was like really obvious. We could see it in real time that it looked to be the other way, the decision. It should have been. And you look at slow-mo and it's like, yep. There was one where Matisse Tell curled in a cross and the Frankfurt defender just kind of hoofed it out of play behind the goal, which for what was everyone expecting a corner. And they gave a goal kick. And you could see the ball go in a completely different kind of momentum and direction. It was so odd. Yeah, very odd indeed. But, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Very strange. But actually, for that one, I think Tell ran across. He was so incensed and got himself a yellow card. I mean, you're never going to change a goal kick to a corner. But, he's young, I get it. But on the pitch, I think there were some positive signs. I think from the back four, yes, the early shot that was just a beauty of a shot for me. I actually thought the defending was pretty good. Romero and Van der Ven getting time together in defence is a hugely important thing. I think Mickey Van der Ven especially started to look more and more like his old self. There were some of those running back, sliding tackles that we love to see him do. 6 clearances from him, 3 headed clearances, 3 ball recoveries, 2 interceptions. He did look a little bit more hampered late on, but thankfully it is nothing more than cramp, Postecoglou said afterwards. Van der Ven said afterwards to TNT Sport, it's really good to have the whole team back. Of course, you can see when everybody is fit what kind of team we are and the kind of football we play. We play a really good game today. It's really good to have everybody back and hopefully everyone stays fit now and we go again next week. Like I said about Romero's raiding runs up the pitch, I think that shows his fitness as well, that he's able to do that now. They are terrifying. They're thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. They really are. Just especially when he stays up there as a second striker. It kind of creates chaos, good and bad. But yeah, Bentancur did really well in filling in for him quite a lot. He actually had the best defensive stats of anyone on the pitch yesterday, Bentancur. He had 10 ball recoveries, 4 interceptions, 1 clearance, and he won 7 of his 11 ground duels. Thought Lucas Bergvall again was very good. Really tidy kind of driving display. Kept trying to get the team going. 6 ball recoveries from him, 2 interceptions, and of course that amazing run and shot that should have been much more from it. Postecoglou said of Bergvall, was asked about him, he was great, but the whole team was. I thought Rodri was outstanding. Both fullbacks defensively and with the ball were really causing problems. Kuti and Mickey handled their front threats really well, apart from the goal we conceded, which was the only disappointing bit. The front 3 were working with manners and were really creative. You can't ask any more from the lads than what they did, especially in that second half to create that many chances. We don't get the win, but I can't ask any more from the players. There were still some issues in attack for me. Solanke just continues to battle away with just so little service. Scraps he feeds off. His run in the build-up to Porro's goal kind of said everything about him. It was key, but it's so much of his play is like that. It's like this selfless stuff that creates space for others, and he doesn't get to be in those positions himself. I mean, he's got 19 goal involvements in 36 games, which is pretty decent, to be honest. But he hasn't scored a goal. Because he hasn't scored a goal since he came back from the knee injury, it technically means he hasn't scored a goal for Spurs since January the 4th against Newcastle. He's a striker, he wants to score. Yeah, look, he was out for a couple of months, so we're not saying he hasn't scored for months because he hasn't been on the pitch scoring. He quite literally hasn't been on the pitch for some of that. But as a striker, he'll want those goals going. He deserves so much better service than he gets. Brennan Johnson, played the full game, didn't really make the impact in any way, shape or form that he did against Southampton. He was quite disciplined. There was a lot of tracking back and stuff, but yeah, in terms of, he would have wanted to put that chance away, especially that he fired over from Spence's pullback later on. Sonny was he had some moments, obviously key part in the goal, had that lovely shot that was pushed away as well, but he couldn't find a lot of space to kind of get into. And actually, Topmuller said after the game, I think we managed to keep Son fairly under control. He didn't manage to make his runs inside. It wasn't just him, but the whole team on our side has grown from this experience today. Postecoglou waited quite late to make his changes. I definitely probably would have liked to see some changes earlier, but I understood his logic. Spurs were pushing and trying to, and they were doing well in what they were doing. And that's kind of what he said after the game. He said, I thought we were well in control, well on top, and we were creating chances. It was in the back of my mind that on the left-hand side, I knew the boys had worked really hard with guys like Matisse, Jed and Pape coming on. We could really go at them. They almost pulled off an unbelievable move again when Matisse played it to Jed, Jed to Brennan, and it was a carbon copy of the weekend, but it went over the bar. 1-1. We know that Spurs needed to score in Germany. We probably knew that they were going to have to anyway. They'll likely have to do so more than once because, look, the Deutsche Bank Park, it's going to be an intimidating place to go. I went there with Spurs a couple of years back under Conte in the Champions League. It is a noisy place. On the whole this season, Frankfurt have done well there. However, if you want one crumb of comfort, it is that in the since the beginning of March, they've lost 2 of the 3 games they've played at home. So they're not, totally, dominant and superior at home. They can be got at, but we know that Spurs are going to have to be a lot better away from home with a bit of noise than they have been this season. It's been a real kind of one of the Achilles heels this season, and they've got to be much better than that. They've often crumbled with a bit of noise, and they need to be much better than that. Because look, if there's ever a time to stand up to increase decibels, it's now. It is quite clichédly the cup fight. Clichédly? That's dreadful. It is their cup final, Spurs. It really is right now because, you need to get through. They need to elongate this season and save it from the hell that it could be. Kulusevski, as I said earlier, would be a big plus. I think if there's any game he's going to be pushing to be ready for, it'll be this one. And hopefully it looks like he's on course to do that, barring any setbacks this week. First, of course, there is Wolverhampton Wanderers and a trip to Molineux on Sunday. Rarely a place that I've ever enjoyed going. It's a great, it's a cool stadium and all that, old school stadium, but Spurs just don't do very well there. Spurs have not won at Molineux since 2021. Have not beaten Wolves home or away since 2022. They've lost 3 of the past 4 meetings against Wolves. So yay! Vitor Pereira's side, they're doing quite well at the moment as well. They've won 5 of their last 8 Premier League matches. They've won their past 3 fixtures as well. They're 12 points clear of the drop zone. If they were to beat Spurs, they'd be 2 points behind them. Spurs, I know this feels like a bit of a nothingy game, but I still feel like Spurs need to kind of win this, not only just to try and get up into the top half of the table before the season finishes, but just to kind of get some momentum going, or keep some momentum going from the recent kind of decent attacking performances, at least to go to Frankfurt with then. He probably will rotate his squad because I think he has to, with Thursday in one side, but also having a quick turnaround for some of those players as well. Van der Ven and Doggy both had cramp towards the end. There were various other players you could see were very tired. Jed Spence you'd think comes in. Pat Matassar probably comes in. Yves Bissouma maybe as well. Ben Davies perhaps for one of the centre-backs. Matisse Tell probably comes in as well. Archie Gray maybe. Whether that's as a centre-back or full-back, who knows? Or maybe even in midfield. Wilson Odobert, if he is fit to play, probably starts. Does need to get him game time and get him back into the rhythm. It was... it's one of those where it's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. If he plays a strong side and they lose and then they go to Frankfurt all tired, people say you shouldn't have done that. But then if he plays a really rotated squad like he did against Fulham, people will say, well, that was ridiculous. You kind of essentially gave the game away. Can't win, really. I would expect probably 5-6 changes, maybe, at least. Wolves, I've said it there, it's going to be a tough game. But I think Spurs they do need to rotate. I think, it's all about Thursday. It really is. But still, those players all the players I've just said should still be going there and bringing a decent level of quality to the team. They just should. Like I say, it's all about morale now. And I think these last two games again have continued to show that the players are playing for Postecoglou. You know, I've seen some people trying to suggest that that's not the case. I think it's clearly is there that they're still playing for him. But all eyes are on that second leg. It's as you know, as Leia once said in a message to Obi-Wan Kenobi, "You're our only hope." And Europa League, you are our only hope for something joyful and something positive to come out of this season from hell. Yeah, please do. And please give me a nice trip to Wolverhampton. Please do say hello if you see me on the trains going up and coming back. It's an early start on Sunday. It really is. But fingers crossed we've got some positive stuff to talk about. I'm going to head off now because I want to watch the under-17s are playing their Premier League Cup final. That's starting quite soon, actually. So I want to get off and try and watch that. And yeah, and I'll probably talk about that, hopefully in a positive way, in the next video as well, which will probably be on Monday night, unless I get a chance to write it maybe a very late video on Sunday to go out on Monday morning. We'll see how I'm feeling. Hopefully in a really good mood where I just feel I really have to do it. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Like I said, keep an eye on the 10:30 stuff tonight. A little bit more about the Molly at Tottenham Hotspur. And some other little bits and pieces in there as well that were quite interesting. But yeah, fingers crossed ahead of Sunday, and then heading out to Germany for the match on Thursday night. Again, if you see me out in Frankfurt, please do say hello. It's always nice. People are very pleasant to me. I'm still waiting for the day when someone's horrible to me. It'll happen at some point. But up to this point, people have been very nice. And it's very, very much appreciated. Met some very nice people. Last night, one Spurs fan had come all the way from Vegas, another American Spurs fan as well, actually, who I saw as well, and various Spurs fans from around about as well. So, yeah, it's always good fun to talk Tottenham, even when it's quite depressing. Right, time to head off. Yeah. So I think it's anything marathon related. Not really. Just trying to get there. April 27th. It's all about that. We're heading towards that crunch day, and I'm a little bit sore, but I'm going to get through it. I'm not going to go to the Tottenham medical staff at this point. It's probably best not to. But yeah, right. Time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.